Welcome all to the Member Day SoC Infra HC meeting. I'm Ved Shanbog. Good to see. Uh, Better? Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, good to see a lot of the members who joined the call here. Good to put a face to the name. I'm Ved Shanbog. I chair the meeting, and I have Gaj here.
Hi, I'm Gaj, Jinder Panisar, I'm Gaj, and as you can see, Ved and I in competition for the beards, right?
He's winning. So we have about 20 minutes. What we thought we would do today is do a recap of the work we did in the HC over the year, so that at the end we'll see the things that are in flight that we need to land in 23, and then hope to have a bit of open time, see if there are top of mind, high priority items that the members would like to add to the list of things that the HC should be working on in 23. Right. So,
And also any pointers in what went wrong or how we could do things better.
that will be extremely appreciated, right? So we can streamline our work and work better this year. So we formed the HC in February 22. I just have a quick snippet of the charter that we had. It's very broad, saying identify high priority gaps in RISC-V technology, hardware or software, that are needed to build SoCs targeting various industry segments. So as you can see, it was pretty broad. And so the first couple of months we spent doing a gap analysis of the technologies that might be missing in our portfolio in order to build SoCs, and we focused on the baseline things that might be needed across industry segments, not going into very specialized needs like safety or so on. We may want to address them at a future time. But what we came up with was a small set, an IOMMU. We identified the need for more standardized RAS, RAS as in reliability, availability, and serviceability, quality of service, virtualization, and the SoC performance monitoring. So with that list in hand, and this was a lot of discussion we had in the HC with the members, coming up with this prioritized gap analysis. We had the IMMU TG at that point sort of in flight, so this was sort of grandfathered into the HC. And this is one of the key components in the SoC for achieving security, safety, more efficient IO virtualization, and so on. So and this specification, the TG has been working diligently throughout the year. They're pretty close to freezing on it. It's still open, so there's members have a lot of opportunity to feed in additional feedback to improve it as it goes towards the freeze. The second bucket that we focused on was RAS. And as you recall, RAS used to be a HC, but it wasn't functioning as an HC. So early on, we turned RAS HC into a RAS SIG under the SoC HC governance. This is and the SIG is shared by Aaron and Johan. And based on the gap analysis, the SIG recommended formation of two TGs here. The first one is sort of something new we are doing. We haven't had a TG to come up with terms and definitions, but I felt that was important because RAS is a broad topic. It's been around for many decades. And we want to make sure that everyone, when they say, Apple, they mean an apple. So the goal of this TG is to come up with an established framework of terms and definitions that sort of provide, that feed into, other extensions wherever they need to refer to something related to RAS. this TG would provide the terminology, the language to use for it. They have started meeting on this. They have an initial list of terms that they put out on their on their GitHub. So again, members should contribute there. The second gap that the SIG identified was around a standardized error record register interface, right? So it's called as RERI, R-E-R-I. So the goal of this was not to define how RAS should be built into a SoC. That's very product specific as to what errors matter, how they need to be mitigated, and what the fit targets are for a product and so on. But the goal of this TG was to augment RAS features in a SoC with a standardized reporting and logging interface, a register interface that can be standardized as a memory mapped interface through which you can enable error detection, collect the error logs, and configure components to report such errors when they occur to a handler component. Right? Both these TGs, they are well underway. Again, looking for broader participation. The next gap area that was found was around quality of service, and and we formed a SIG to study the gaps and formulate a sort of strategy for addressing the gaps. So the quality of service essentially is a collection of technologies that helps to mitigate what you would call as a noisy neighbor problem, right? So when you got a system with multiple workloads, there can be unintended and unexpected interference from one workload to another due to sharing of common resources in the SoC, such as caches and memory bandwidth and so on. And so what the QoS SIG spent a couple of months working on a white paper, studying the problem. So they did a literature survey. That paper link has the link to the papers that they studied. Did a gap analysis against what's available in other commercial implementations, and sort of tried to come up with a list of high priority items to address as part of the QoS strategy. And that led to the formation of this cache and memory QoS register interface TG. Again, similar to the RAS register interface TG, the goal was not to define how to do QoS. That's very fabric implementation technology specific. But the goal was to define a standardized register interface by which you can, for example, configure a capacity allocation in a cache, or do occupancy monitoring in a cache, or configure bandwidth allocation or monitor bandwidth usage of a workload, and so on. This TG has been functioning for a few months now. They have a draft version of the spec on their GitHub. Again, please participate. The next area that the HC wanted to address, determine if we have gaps that we need to fill, was in this whole space of debug, trace, and performance monitoring. So you'll find the link to the charter. It's a very expansive charter for the SIG, and I forget to mention that it's a SIG and not a TG. So their goal is essentially to come up with things like standardized register interface for debug and trace in the SoC. Possibly look at standardizing the debug security aspects of it, like debug authorization, reflecting debug into the security posture, connectors, if we need to standardize anything around that space. There have been 2 trace extensions, one that was ratified last year, one that's very close to getting frozen, the end trace. And one of the objectives of the SIG is to understand, as we are adding new extensions, if there are further extensions needed to the debug or the trace specification, for example, cycle accurate trace or vector trace and so on. So they have started a gap analysis and prioritization effort. This is work in progress. So I believe they had a couple of meetings so far trying to put this together. We also did a few other business in 2022. One of them was try to put together a collection of metadata for extensions. So as we saw these various extensions trying to carry different pieces of information throughout the SoC. So again, we didn't have a goal to standardize a bus or a NOC, but we wanted to have a collection of information that might flow. For example, quality of service identifiers, security identifiers, and so on. That would be a good point of reference. So there's a live document that the HCS created. It's there. And the second, we started touching upon the needs of confidential computing on the SoC infrastructure. So the AppTE work group and the confidential computing SIG have been doing a great job of putting their requirements together. So we asked them the question, hey, what is it that the SoC needs to do to meet your needs? And they gave us a presentation here. And we hope to turn that into a broader white paper going forward. So what do we think we want to do in 23? We want to continue and complete the work started in 22, so we need to land them. So there are a few TGs and specifications in flight, the IMMU, the cache and memory QoS register interface, the RERI, the RAS terms and definitions. There's the NTrace, especially things like the common controls are very eagerly awaited by both the trace specifications. Like I mentioned, the confidential computing infrastructure white paper, that should help us identify gaps and see how what we need to do to address them. Complete the DTPM gap analysis and prioritization. One thing we also realized is we may also want to put some processes in place for specification maintenance as to erratas and how do we revise these documents. So those are few things that Gaj and I try to list as things that we have started in 22, we want to continue in 23. So we can go around the floor and see if there are other high priority items that we should add to this list. Of course, we'll have much more detailed discussions in our regular HC meetings, but this is a good opportunity since everyone's in the room.
I'd just like to add that you would have noticed that there are people who are acting chairs for one or two of the task groups. It would be great if people could either step in or help those people who are acting. So some participation would be great. Thanks.
Feedback on what you felt worked well, didn't work so well. Yeah. All right. I think the few things that would be interesting in this year to focus on, like the confidential computing, that seems to be bringing in a massive amount of new infrastructure needs. For example, supporting the IDE extension in PCI or the TDISP extension of PCI and so on. So that could be another area that we focus on. Yeah, Nick?
So how about IOPMP? Would that fit into the SoC?
It is currently governed by the security HC.
Shouldn't we move it to the SoC? I mean, since IMMU is there, would it make sense to be part of the SoC?
Yeah, I think maybe we should have that discussion about the IOPMP governance, but I think the last time we had the discussion, it was found to be more aligned with the security HC direction. Maybe it was because it was being driven out of the TE, lightweight TE, TG. So, yes, so there's some history around that. But maybe we should take a fresh look at it and see if it should fall under the SoC HC. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ravindra from Imagination Technologies. I would just like to know what's happening on the automotive safety side. Is there any work happening there for standardization, especially on ASIL compliance?
So there is a functional safety SIG that spun up quite recently. I don't know if anybody from the SIG is, yes, maybe I'll let you speak to it.
Could you repeat the question?
Question is what's happening in the functional safety domain around achieving ASLD-like capabilities, right?
Around
ASLD, SIL3, ASLD, the automotive safety and
yeah. ASLD, sorry.
Sorry.
English is not my mother tongue. Functional safety is a special interest group, and there are many companies from the aeronautics domain active there. There are a few one from the automotive domain, but we would welcome more from this domain. Expectations and solutions are sometimes a bit different between an airplane, where the safety budget is higher than in a car. And the solution might be different, and the underlying needs might be different. So we would welcome more companies from the automotive domain, and also to mention that we meet every week. And we have 2 slots, one earlier, one later, to accommodate more geographies. So we have a West Coast friendly slot and an Asia friendly slot. So everyone and every company is welcome there.
Thank you.
I'll just add, I don't see Peter Lewin here, but Imagination Technologies. Oh, there he is. You want to say a couple things? Since we're talking about ASIL-D.
Was there a specific question, or just the ASIL? Oh, yeah.
ASIL-D and about do we have any plans, which groups are working on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just kicked off the Automotive Special Interest Group. I'm chairing that. At the moment, we're looking for a vice chair. So if anyone is interested, please do stand up. Obviously, there a lot of how we work with the functional safety SIG is a lot of that kind of making sure we don't overlap and making sure that we do make sure we're considering the automotive industry in that. We're currently in that kind of early stage of just trying to flesh out what the gap analysis is, where we need to be focusing on automotive, and how we actually address that ASIL-D section. So again, we meet every 2 weeks, once in a Western time slot, one in an Eastern time slot. Yeah, do please join in.
Would you state your name, please? So,
It's Peter Lewin.
thank you.
Hey, Ravi, Sahita. Can you guys talk a little bit about manageability? Like, what are the, are there any, do they sort of fold into like the fabric requirements in general? Or are there other requirements for manageability, like interactions with, BMC or other things on the platform?
So, yeah, when we did this initial gap analysis, there was this whole aspect about, what do we is there something special about things like PLDM and Redfish that we need to address as part of the HC? There's also the whole frameworks around power management, thermals, and telemetry, specifically around, for example, for large fleet management, does the SoC needs to provide a set of telemetry? So a bunch of those items were captured, but we didn't pick them up in 22 since we had much higher priority gaps. So I'm just showing the top 5 that we picked on. But if you go into a gap analysis, we did identify a need to study. I wouldn't say there's a gap there because there's a lot of standardized frameworks available from DMTF around things like MCTP and so on. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. But we did want to spend some quality time looking at those frameworks and see if there's anything specific to RISC-V that would require maybe an extension to Redfish or one of those industry standards. So that's one of the bin list items, but it didn't bubble up high enough in the members' priority list. If there are no other questions, then I think we are almost at the end of our hour, end of our budgeted time. So thank you so much for coming, and good to see you all, and hope to see more participation at the SoC HC and the related SIGs and TGs. Thank you.